In the ghost town of Pripyat, where shadows stretch through crumbling halls and whispers of the past claw at the silence, a dark legend lies hidden. Among the twisted trees and haunted ruins, there is a relic that looms in the shadows, a monument to the horrors that still fester in the exclusion zone. Once, it served a desperate purpose, scraping deadly debris from the roof of Reactor 4 after the 1986 Chernobyl catastrophe. But now, it stands as a grim sentinel, a monstrous piece of radioactive machinery, rusting in the eerie quiet, tainted by the echoes of tragedy. A hulking, twisted thing of steel and radiation. They say its rusted frame harbors a darkness that feeds on the desolation around it. And those who dare to get too close never leave unchanged. Locals call it the Death Claw of Chernobyl. The Claw of Death, also known as the Chernobyl Claw, is a large, sturdy crane claw that was used to remove highly radioactive debris from the site of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant explosion. Its nickname comes from its menacing claw-like appearance and the dangerous task it performed. After the explosion of reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, the area was covered in radioactive debris, including pieces of the reactor itself. The claw was used to clear this debris, which included highly radioactive materials such as uranium and graphite. This task was extremely dangerous due to the intense levels of radiation. But as cleanup efforts slowed, the claw was abandoned, left to rust in the radioactive wasteland. The exact reason why the Death Claw was left in its current location is not entirely clear. It is believed to have been hastily abandoned during cleanup operations. Due to its high contamination, it cannot be safely buried or melted down without risking further environmental contamination. It is one of the most radioactive objects in the zone, with radiation levels near it reaching dangerously high levels. Measurements have shown gamma radiation levels of up to 130 microsieverts per hour near the claw. It now sits in eerie stillness, its once mighty form distorted and corroded by time and radiation. The surrounding air crackles with invisible energy, a constant reminder of the unseen danger it harbors. Despite its high radiation levels, the Claw of Death has become a popular attraction for tourists visiting the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone. Visitors often speak of the claw in hushed tones, their voices tinged with fear and awe. They say that at night, when the moon is hidden and the wind howls through the skeletal remains of Pripyat, the claw comes to life. Its metal joints creak and groan, and its shadow stretches long and menacing across the ground. Some claim to have seen it move, its rusted fingers twitching as if reaching for something or someone. Others speak of a faint, ghostly glow surrounding it, a sickly green light that pulses with the rhythm of a heartbeat. Those who dare approach too close report a sense of intense unease, as if the claw is watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. Radiation levels near the claw are dangerously high, a testament to the deadly materials it has once manipulated. Geiger counters scream in protest as they approach, their frantic clicks echoing the silent screams of the past. It is said that the claw's touch is death itself, a swift and relentless end to any who dare defy its warning. The claw has become a macabre attraction for thrill seekers and ghost seekers alike. They come seeking a glimpse of the supernatural, hoping to capture evidence of the claw's eerie movements or the spectral glow that surrounds it. But few emerge unscathed, their minds haunted by the chilling presence of the Chernobyl Claw. Legend has it that the claw is haunted by the spirits of those who perished in the disaster. Locals and visitors have reported strange occurrences around the claw, especially during the dead of night. It is said that when the moon is full and the air is still, you can hear the faint sound of metal scraping against metal, as if the claw is trying to move on its own. One such story comes from a group of urban explorers who, driven by curiosity and the thrill of the unknown, decided to venture into the exclusion zone for a challenge. They were drawn to the Claw, fascinated by its dark history and haunted tales, and eager to see for themselves. Their destination was a desolate industrial yard in the heart of Pripyat, hidden among crumbling warehouses and rusting machinery. It was a place few tourists dared to visit, off the beaten path and far from the safety of better-known landmarks like the Ferris wheel or the iconic Soviet apartments. This forgotten corner of the exclusion zone was where a monstrous relic had been abandoned, left to rot after the Chernobyl disaster. As they approached the Claw, the world around them seemed to grow heavier, as if an invisible force was pressing down on their shoulders. The air grew colder, and an eerie silence enveloped them. Their Geiger counters began clicking frantically, warning them of high radiation levels. A thin mist clung to the ground, swirling around their feet as they walked. Each step echoed unnaturally in the vast emptiness, amplifying the eerie silence that surrounded them. Trees, twisted and skeletal, loomed over the cracked pavement, their bare branches clawing at the pale sky. The buildings they passed were hollow husks, their windows gaping like the empty sockets of skulls, staring at intruders with unseeing eyes. After winding through Pripyat's wilderness-choked streets and past the crumbling husks of factories, they finally reached the industrial yard. There, in the center of the rubble-strewn lot, stood the Claw. Seeing the Claw for the first time was like stepping into a nightmare. The massive mass of corroded metal rose from the earth like an ancient beast, half buried in the rubble it once cleared. Its iron limbs, twisted and warped by decades of radiation exposure and neglect, jutted out at grotesque angles. It was larger than any of them had imagined, an industrial behemoth now reduced to a rotting corpse. The Claw's surface was a patchwork of rust and grime, its steel plates corroded and warped. Jagged edges and sharp protrusions caught the dim light of the overcast sky, casting ominous shadows on the ground. There was a malevolent presence to them, as if they were waiting, biding their time. Up close, the Claw's true horror became clear. The once functional machine now seemed alive in a way that defied explanation. The metal seemed to breathe, or perhaps it was the faint hum of radiation that filled the air around it. A cold, unnatural energy clung to the Claw, radiating from it like the heat of a dying star. The air was thick with the smell of iron and decay, and a strange metallic taste lingered in their mouths. The group stopped in their tracks, their collective breath catching in their throats. The oppressive silence was suddenly pierced by the frantic clicking of their Geiger counters, alerting them to danger. And yet, none of them could look away. It was as if the Claw had them in its grip long before they had even stepped into the clearing. Standing before the Claw was like standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss that stared back at them. The longer they stared at it, the more it seemed to change, subtle, almost imperceptible movements. A slight tremor in the air, a groan of rusting metal under unseen strain. It was as if the Claw were waking up, becoming aware of their presence. A deep, primal fear seeped into their bones, growing with every second they stood there. The temperature suddenly dropped, as if the Claw itself were sucking the heat from the air around it. Each breath became labored, weighed down by the oppressive atmosphere. They could feel it in their chests, a tightness, as if the Claw were closing in, squeezing their hearts in its invisible grip. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming, but it wasn't just the Claw. It seemed as if the entire exclusion zone had eyes, invisible but ever-present. The wind picked up, carrying with it a faint whisper, though none of them could make out the words. For Andrey, the sensation was intoxicating. Despite the terror gnawing at the edges of his mind, he took a step forward, drawn to the Claw like a moth to a flame. Up close, the Claw seemed even more alive, its battle-scarred surface edged with radioactive debris. It towered over him, and in the shadow of its massive fingers, Andrey felt small, insignificant, prey to some ancient predator that had just awakened. Ignoring his friend's protests, Andrey approached the claw, his steps slow and deliberate. The closer he got, the more his skin tingled with an odd sensation, an oppressive weight, as if he were being watched. He reached out to touch it, and the moment his fingers brushed the cold metal, a jolt of icy terror surged through him. His Geiger counter screamed in protest, and in the distance, a low grinding sound echoed across the clearing. The claw seemed to move slightly, as if its rusted joints were whimpering back to life. Andrey pulled his hand back, his skin tingling at the touch, but the damage was already done. Still, he pressed on as he climbed onto the claw, its metal groaning beneath his weight, the noise unnervingly human in its low, painful creak. His friends hesitated, their growing discomfort palpable. Something wasn't right. Finally reaching the base of the machine, landing triumphantly, he urged his friends, "Take a picture of this." And just as the camera clicked, a gust of icy wind swept across the clearing. The claw's rusted fingers twitched, just for a moment, but long enough for everyone to see. Andrey's triumphant smile faded as a look of pure terror crossed his face. "Did you see that?" he stammered, his bravado evaporating in an instant. Before anyone could respond, Andrey passed out. His hand clutched his chest and his mouth opened in a silent scream. His friends rushed to his side, but no words came from his lips, only a single whispered word, "Ghosts." Panic gripped the group. Their Geiger counters screamed, louder and faster, as if to mimic the terror coursing through their veins. They tried to wake Andrey, shaking him violently, but his body remained limp, cold, and unresponsive. In desperation, they decided to go in search of help, leaving Andrey's motionless form behind. They stumbled through the darkness, tripping over rubble and debris, their breaths coming in ragged gasps as they searched for help. When they returned with the authorities, they were shocked to find no trace of Andrey. His belongings, his backpack, camera, and flashlight were scattered all over the floor, but he was nowhere to be found. The area was eerily silent, and the claw stood still, as if mocking their fear. The authorities began an extensive search, and as they searched the area, they discovered strange, unidentifiable footprints leading away from the claw and disappearing into the dense forest. These footprints were unlike any human or animal footprints they had ever seen, adding to the mystery. The search was intense, but as the night wore on, no trace of Andrey was found. The footprints abruptly disappeared, as if their creator had simply ceased to exist. As the days turned into weeks, theories about Andrey's disappearance began to circulate. Some believed that he had been taken by the spirits of those who perished in the disaster, seeking revenge or companionship in their eternal suffering. Others speculated that the high levels of radiation caused a hallucination or mental lapse, transporting Andrey to another dimension or time, leaving him a perpetual wanderer of the Exclusion Zone. The forest where the footprints disappeared is known as the Haunted Forest. Locals and visitors have reported strange occurrences when they venture too close. Some claim to hear Andrey's voice calling for help, while others saw shadowy figures moving among the trees. The forest took on a life of its own, becoming a place of fear and superstition. The legend of the Death Claw grows with each passing year. To this day, those who visit it report strange occurrences and speak of a ghostly presence hovering around it. Some claim to have seen shadowy figures moving in the darkness, while others hear whispers carried on the wind. Visitors often speak of a feeling of intense unease near the claw, as if they are being watched by unseen eyes. Some even report seeing the claw's metal fingers twitch, as if they are reaching for something or someone. The claw itself remains still during the day, but at night there are reports of movement, a slow creaking as its fingers reach into the darkness. To this day, radiation levels around the claw remain dangerously high, a testament to the deadly materials it once manipulated. The sickly green glow still pulses in the dead of night, its rhythm like that of a heart still beating after death. Those who visit claim that the claw holds a deadly curse, and that to touch it is to court death itself. So if you ever find yourself in the exclusion zone, beware the claw of Chernobyl. For it is not just a relic of the past, but a portal to the supernatural, where the line between the living and the dead is blurred, and the spirits of Chernobyl still roam. The story of the Chernobyl Claw has become part of the dark folklore of the exclusion zone. It is a tale of tragedy and terror, a reminder of the disaster that changed the world. For those who dare venture into the zone, the claw stands as a dark sentinel, a relic of the past that continues to haunt the present. In the end, the claw remains a dark sentinel, a relic of a disaster that changed the world. It stands as a stark reminder of the power of nuclear energy and the horrors that can arise when it is released. And so long as it stands, the claw will continue to haunt the dreams of those who dare remember its dark legacy. The Chernobyl Claw has stood as a silent sentinel, guarding its secrets and casting a long shadow over the exclusion zone.